All right, we're back, and I'm very happy to have an actual person here on the stage. It's just been like the Dan Ram show by myself, and I'm so glad to have you here. For those who don't know, from UK to Berlin, from art and culture to tech, we've got the German correspondent for Sifted. It's Miriam, and now they're doing a virtual applause. But Miriam, for those who don't know Sifted, what is Sifted?
So Sifted is a tech and startups publication, which is backed by the Financial Times. We're focusing on Europe, trying to expand our reach, so it's good to be in Munich today.
You're also the dedicated writer on Future of Work, and you do this for a newsletter. So tell us about that.
Yeah, that's correct. So we have a newsletter every week, which is called Startup Life.
Yes.
And this is for founders, operators, startup employees, basically just to help out with different aspects of running or working for a company. So it could be anything like how to hire a developer or how to fire your investors or, I don't know, whatever it might be.
Amazing. Excellent. Hopefully we'll hear a little bit about that. You can check that out when we come back in just seconds. Miriam's going to be joined by 3 amazing panelists. And what are you guys talking about?
We are talking about how to attract and retain talent in the current market, which is definitely a hot topic. So I think this is going to be an interesting one.
Excellent. 10 seconds, and we come back live. Catch you in a moment.
Hello. It's nice to have you all here. How's it going?
Going well.
Very well. It's going.
Nice. Well, I'll just do a few quick intros then, starting with the person to my left, Kalman. Kalman is the Senior Acquisition Manager at Personio. He joined the company in 2019 and has been helping to build up its engineering department from around 50 to more than 300 employees, right?
That's right.
Perfect. Then we've got Ilona over here. She is the founder and chief product officer of 400, now Octopus Energy. And then, last but not least, Rico is an HR management professional who has worked in the industry for more than 25 years. Is that correct?
Almost.
Almost.
Don't make me older as I am.
He's also a former professional athlete and soccer player and is the co-founder of Bon Republic, which is a talent management platform. Brilliant. So let's start off then with you, Kalman, because as I just mentioned, you've been helping to build up Personio's engineering department over the last couple of years. Can you tell us how that's been, whether it's been challenging at all? I can imagine it has been.
Well, I think it would be a lie to not call it challenging, right? But on the other hand, it was also really, really rewarding for us. I think what is important to understand is that we have been growing as a company a lot, and of course also our talent acquisition team, right? So when I joined in 2019, just engineering recruiting was around 3 people. Just 3 people. And now we're way more than 20 people just looking for product design and engineering, also in various functions, right? We have talent acquisition managers like me, we have sourcers, which are doing all of the direct search, and we also have coordinators, for example. I think for us, it is challenging, but on the other hand, the rewarding piece comes from the fact that we are really giving people meaningful work, right? This is also part of our EVP, really giving the people the most meaningful work which they've been ever having in their career here at Personio.
Yeah, it kind of seems like it's the hot topic of the hour, right? Everybody I seem to be talking to is saying, oh God, I can't hire for this person, I can't hire for that role. What would you say has been the hardest roles to recruit for in your experience?
That's a tough question, right? I think what is really important there is to look at the whole topic very holistically, right? So in our organization, for example, if you would ask me what roles you're hiring for, I would probably just say yes, because we are hiring for many, many roles. And to maybe give you 2 tangible examples, I would say technical roles definitely by nature are really, really hard to get at the moment because the market, as we all know, is super, super challenging. These are more one-of-a-kind roles, I would say, whereas on the other hand, we also see roles like, for example, account executives or SDRs, right, in the business. These roles I would call, or we call them internally, high-volume roles. And this high volume of getting people, right, this comes with complete different challenges. And so I would say there's various different, very, very challenging roles to fill.
Yeah, I mean, is it your impression as well that, you know, the talent market is kind of tight right now? Like, do you hear people talking about it? Are the companies that you speak to also worrying about this?
It's very tight, yes. I mean, the thing is, what I observed in the last couple of months is, especially during the COVID crisis, right, that the behavior of the applicants is changing and the demands are changing. So what before was, especially if we talk about the German market, quitting a job without having something else was simply impossible to almost everybody I know. And in the meantime, I have at least 5, 6 friends I can name you right now who did that. Right, my best friend was one of them, and he just said, and he's very conservative, right? So he just said he wants to quit his job, and he doesn't have to something else. He's really looking for something which is matching his demands and his requirements. So people are looking very, very much closer.
Yeah, I think part of the conversation here today, right, is about how you actually attract these people. Like, what is meaningful to candidates? Ilona, maybe you want to pick this one up.
Yeah, just very quickly, I wanted to say you introduced me as the co-founder of Octopus Energy, which is not quite true. I founded the German business of what is now Octopus Energy. And to answer your question is, culture is the underlying principle that needs to be right? So you need to be very clear what you stand for. And this is, I think, more and more what people are looking for. They're looking for a match. Is it something that brings me further in my own path that I have as a person? And people are much more conscious about what they want, where they want to go, what they want to learn. And so we need to show as employers, how can we bring people on board who want to deliver what we want to do, but also that brings them further on their own path. And I think that's really changed. And people have a choice now, so culture is ever more important now.
Absolutely. I mean, when we talk about benefits, you know, what would you say are the most important benefits right now to offer to prospective candidates that is actually going to draw them in at this point?
It's really individual. I would encourage people also to check, how do you compare against what else is in the market? For me, the biggest is actually be really honest and upfront what your budget is for this particular role. That's the last thing that a lot of employers don't want to be upfront about, but it will probably make or break you. Will this person actually talk to you? So benefits to me is not the most important thing straight away, but is a key one apart from the salary.
Definitely, but to add on that, I think it starts at a different angle, because I think companies have to realize that it's very important to communicate to applicants, also to internal existing employees, why is it beneficial to work for the company, right? And that doesn't start with monetary benefits. It's a lot of different things, which is communication, how people are treated which are not working in the office. Is there a meeting which is collective and integrating them? So how diverse and integrative and inclusive is an organization? That people are really, really looking at that much, much more. And on the market, it was always like this, that a founder, for example, is very strong and outgoing and is attracting people. But now people are really listening what they are saying, because they want to know what do they stand for. As you said, Ilona, it's really important how to express what you stand for.
Yeah, I also.
I was going to say it's the sense of connection that people are looking for. It's like, do I belong here? Do I make a meaningful contribution? How do I feel that? We just as employers, we must make sure that this exists. We really value people.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I also would like to add is also depends a bit on the maturity of the company, right? What kind of benefits you want to offer. I've seen this in Personio particularly. When we were a very young company, we mostly also had very young employees, like 25 on average, 26 on average, right? And then at one point you're looking also for filling more senior roles, and by nature these people are most likely a bit older, 30s, 40s, and they have family, for example. So one of the key points for us is also offering family-friendly benefits, which we've been changing in the last couple of years a lot to attract these people and to also retain these people.
Yeah.
What would you say are family-friendly benefits? Because I mean, in my experience, I would say this is more kind of like on the level of policy, right? Like parental leave policy, those kinds of things shouldn't necessarily be seen as a benefit, but it's something that's actually quite fundamental, right? Or
I mean, everything what helps your employees, not gender specific, to work and integrate their kind of private life and the work life in the best way, which is childcare, for example, or remote work, at least, to support their environment at home. To kind of, it can be buying a desk and a stool, right, which is fitting to their environment. That can solve a lot of issues. But the basic thing is you have to listen to your employees. You just have to ask them. And I'm consulting a lot of companies in the last couple of years, and we as Bonn Republic, we hear that a lot from our customers, that we don't know what our employees want. And we say always the same, just ask them and listen. And what we also hear a lot, actually, is that, yeah, we ask them, but we don't know how to define measures. And we don't know how to process that. And we know what they want, but it's now 6 months gone, and we haven't touched it. So that's kind of the worst case scenario. So do not ask people and then do nothing with the answers.
Yeah, right. Well, you were both just speaking a lot about kind of culture, right? And that actually, you know, hiring somebody goes beyond offering monetary benefits. It's actually a lot to do with how you convey yourself as a company. So when you are speaking to prospective candidates, how and what should you communicate about your culture or your values?
Kalman?
Yeah, I can of course add something there. So I think what is important there is, first of all, that you have a strong connection with your culture and values already in your interviewing process. For example, at Personio, in all of the interviews, there is a certain focus on the values, maybe except of the coding challenges, right? This might be an exception. But we have, for example, usually the last stages of the interview process, 3 interviews which are really focusing on our operating principles and core values, right? And that way, of course, you are not only communicating them, of course, to your applicant, but we also have them on the website, right? It's everything visible for the candidates, but you're also kind of actively involving them into, you know, finding out if they meet our requirements, but on the other hand, and most importantly, actually, do they also feel, you know, welcome in this environment? Because there might be people which say, well, these are not my core values and operating principles, and so be it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were talking backstage earlier, right, about how companies perhaps need to spend just a little bit more time actually getting to know candidates.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak a little bit about that?
So what we were talking about was that companies expect their candidates to know a lot about them. But I sometimes think, how much time did you take to actually know your candidate? Is there something that stuck out for you, why you think this person belongs with you and could contribute something valuable? And I think this is the magic part. It doesn't take a lot of time to do this, but just with a few really dedicated questions, like, you know, maybe even about childhood or what you enjoy as a hobby, can give you a bit of an insight that creates this connection. And I think we were talking about the hiring velocity. What an issue is nowadays is we try to go into very standardized processes, and there's tech to do this, which is great. I'm a big believer in tech. I'm a tech entrepreneur myself. But my point is always like, how can we use tech to make things easier? So to open up the human to do their human things. So how can I check things using technology? Maybe a Personio actually is developing something exciting here. I'm really curious to hear. But what I encourage now that I've exited Octopus, what I encourage the companies that I advise is to check what can you do better as a human, something that tech can never do, to create this connection, to find these questions that show you, is this person the right mindset to join you and to grow with you? Because these are the people who are going to stay if you give them the wings to grow inside of your organization.
I mean, you just picked up on, you know, remote hiring as well, and this is something that a lot of companies had to get used to, right, during lockdown in Europe, well, globally, in fact. How do you actually build kind of trust and connection when you're, you know, hiring someone remotely? What are the main things that you would include in that process?
Basically, to make the entire atmosphere in a talk you have with a potential employee as personal as possible. right? So to pick up what you just said, it's really important to have tech behind us to make the process easier, right, for us, to not spending time in administrative work and focus on the human, right? Having time for conversations and already take the time for conversations and prepare for it. I really 100% agree with that. It's nothing worse than you go into a conversation not knowing who's in front of you. And that comes from both sides, right? So it's really weird if that happens. And that's for me, it was always the key. And I do not conduct real interviews, so to say. I have a discussion with that person. I always introduce myself, I introduce why I think that person is important to the company and why this person is potentially an asset, right? And then let the person speak. So if you want to divide it in percentage, I'm speaking 20% and the candidate is speaking 80%. That's really important. And I've experienced a lot of times myself where HR people are talking about themselves and the company, and I had 5 minutes left to discuss about my stuff. That is the worst case scenario. And that solves a lot of issues, even if you don't ever see that person personally.
Yeah, it kind of strikes me as well that, we're in, people say, a candidate-driven market right now. Like candidates have a lot more bargaining power because there's just so much kind of competition out there. And it also seems to me that, if you have a recruitment process that's incredibly long, that has all of these stages, people get bored, they drop out, they don't know how to handle it. So I'm just wondering, are there ways that you can kind of make a recruitment process perhaps more efficient so that it's actually keeping candidates engaged? Are there any steps that you can remove, anything you can make shorter? Carmen, maybe you want to take this one?
Sure. I think we need to look into two things there, right? Because definitely shorter process in general sounds good, right? But of course, you always need to be sure that you are not lowering your bar and all of that, right? So you need to make sure that you still get all of the questions answered you want to have. In general, for example, just to give you a tangible Personio example, we're currently looking into making our IC engineering process a bit leaner, right? In this case, we're trying out a verbal code assessment instead of the take-home coding challenge, right? But another thing which we've been observing, and I think here it is really important to understand that key is always action-based of analysis and data, right? We've been observing through evaluating our candidate net promoter score, which becomes clear after the surveys which our candidates are filling out after each interview process, that candidates are not only wishing in general a shorter process, but also a more tailored process to their needs, right? And here I'm talking about things like, for example, some candidates, they really like to have a daily connection with the talent acquisition manager, right? But not all of them. So for us, it's really important to understand, which candidate really wants what, because the candidate market is, as someone already here said, it's pretty candidate driven right now. So you really need to take the extra mile, and this is what I would like to underline here, taking the extra mile for the candidates to enable them a tailored and individualized process in the end.
Yeah, so we were talking about behavioral science earlier, and one of the major principles is make it easy for people. The thing that makes a massive difference I've seen is Calendly.
Yes.
So just in a way, if a candidate wants to talk to you and they can go and just book a time with you, it's very empowering. It's very easy to do. You sync your calendar, you're done. This is a good example of where tech helps you. So any companies out there who are not using it, just get it
It's a massive
set up.
change. And speed actually is everything in the market. But as we said, I think I would not 100% agree that we say it's either a candidates market or an employer market. I think because it varies from branch to branch, and you have to look at the situation from different angles. But mostly, that's totally correct. The thing is that if you are not fast enough, if you're not able to make fast decisions, because and I have companies in my consulting portfolio who are really fast in the process, but the decision takes 4 weeks. That's deadly for the entire process, right? And then you have to make yourself up. You have to make up your mind before you start a hiring process. What person do I look for? What skills do I look for? What's really important? How important is tech knowledge versus cultural fit, right? If I don't know that before I start, I try to develop then within the process, which is cutting out a lot of employees which are potentially good for the job, but you just wasn't sure. And that's a not so smart move, right? So you have to take time before. So speed is almost everything.
Maybe I can add another angle to this. So
Yeah.
something I really believe in is positivity. Yeah, be optimistic about this. Like, how many times does this actually go really, really, really wrong?
Yeah.
It's not very often. So why don't we? And I say that to the companies I work with is, in 95% of the time, you make a good hire. And you have the probation time, you can find out how it actually is when you work together. So why don't we all assume that people are genuinely interested in working for you?
Right.
And if you make the process shorter, it doesn't mean your candidates are going to be of less quality. I'd say the opposite is true.
The opposite is
The more steps you have, the more qualified, the better candidates will drop out because they say, oh God, why should I fill in this form with like 10 questions? I'm going to do the easy apply on LinkedIn, I'm done. So just believe that most people are genuinely and want to do the right thing,
Yeah.
and don't assume everything's going to go wrong. So just be optimistic.
Totally agree. Yeah. I mean, the fourth and fifth interview doesn't solve your issue at the end. It just makes it harder to decide at the end, right? And if you don't know if a person is fitting to your company and your needs after the third interview, then you will never know it.
Yeah, so, but you were both just kind of picking up on this, almost like a trade-off perhaps, of like having to think of like, okay, this person has X amount of skills that I need versus this person could actually fit really well with culture. So my question to you would be, what are the non-negotiables for a good candidate? Like, what are the absolute things that you would never kind of compromise on when hiring somebody?
Mindset.
Mindset?
Yeah, mindset.
How so?
Preparation for the interview, punctuality. So be on time, right? If you're not on time, just say, I cannot come, but do not come without saying anything.
That would be
really
awkward.
annoys me. That's some specifics, right? And then some role specifics, I guess, which are not negotiable.
Carmen?
Yeah, I can completely agree to that, right? One topic for us, of course, also then a very English-speaking environment here is the general communication, right? Of course, if a person is not able to communicate, it can be, being of a verbose kind, right? Unstoppable candidate. I think all of us have been experiencing these people. Then it's definitely still a nice conversation, right? But I always need to think about the fact how this person then behaves in a team environment, right? And this is then definitely very, very challenging.
What is an unstoppable candidate?
An unstoppable candidate is a candidate.
Is this a term? Do you guys use this term?
Yeah, I know
Okay.
it. I don't use
Well,
it.
wait, are these people that don't stop talking? Or?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you know how
I
it
love
usually
that.
how it usually works is that you go into the conversation and then usually I do my part, right? Quickly introducing, setting expectations takes 1 minute, right? And then I'm handing it over to the candidate, usually already setting the stage, saying, "Listen, I've been reading through your CV. Please only the highlights in 1 minute, all good." And then a candidate starts and says, "Yes, of course." And then after 15 minutes, we are still there, right? Also hard to interrupt. And this is usually something where then at one point there's the line.
But what do you do? Do you interrupt people? Do you have like a funny hand signal that you do?
In a very kind way, we're trying to do it, right? Of course, you need to be always, of course, doing it in a very kind way. That's, I think, the most important. But it doesn't work all of the time, right? These are these small things.
Well, I guess it shows enthusiasm, right?
Or maybe people are just nervous.
On the other hand, yes,
Yeah.
of course.
That too. As we were saying, it's quite a competitive market at the moment, and companies want to hire kind of quickly, right? But how can you ensure the candidates that you bring on board are high quality, whatever high quality means, when you're hiring at scale?
That's basically the first question you need to answer. You need to be able to answer what means the so-called AAA candidates. We only hire AAA candidates. I'm getting annoyed in the meantime to hear that because it doesn't mean anything, right? Because no one can really describe it, right? What does it mean? Because it means something different for every company. So you need to find out what's your AAA candidate. And usually it should be based on the demands of the company, right? So what do we demand of people who are coming in? How should they be culturally? How should they be in terms of communication? Should they be friendly, outgoing, or something like that? You need to define that before. But in a high scalable, you have a lot of pressure. Of course, you need to be fast. You need to kind of open up your funnel, and that's why. And maybe Kalman can also elaborate on that. You need to think about your hiring process for a high scalable company, because it's something completely different if you have to hire 80 people versus 20. Right, so the funnel has to be bigger, the source has to be different, etc. So that's something you have to be clear before. You cannot just start over. That's not working.
Yeah, and another thing there to definitely take an eye on is to think about in which stage are we, right?
Yeah,
so I can
exactly.
give you an example for that. For example, our more senior engineers, 2 years ago, they were of a very general kind, right, from a technical perspective. And now we've been moving in way more specialized roles, right? So what is a high quality candidate, you know, the definition has also been changing. What in my opinion has not been changing so much is the cultural aspect, right? Because that's also part of Personio, that we still like to foster this great culture which we're having, the Personio code, right? Our core values and operating principles. So I think it's important to look at two things. If we look at, let's call it high quality, right? The technical match, and then also the cultural match, where I believe again that the cultural match probably stays rather similar to.
Yeah, true.
Well, Ilona, you were talking about this, right? You were saying to kind of hire for mindset. And maybe at the end of the day, if you have a kind of common mindset, when, you know, shit starts going down, sorry for swearing, maybe these are the people that you need on board, right? People that you can depend on.
Exactly. So, I mean, there's this good, is it that old, I don't know, good old saying, you can teach people skills, you cannot change the way they think. That's why mindset is so important. And if you are very good at identifying people to the right mindset and then give them the framework and the wings to grow with you, then you can master those crises.
Absolutely. So when we're talking about kind of like hiring at scale as well, how can companies ensure that, you know, every candidate is also getting like a stellar recruitment experience? You know, we're talking about onboarding. Maybe you want to pick that one up, Rico?
Yeah. I had a lot of discussions in the past months also with customers from Bonn Republic, because as we cover our kind of onboarding processes as well with our product, how deep do we go in terms of the onboarding? And I mean, I personally have a very, very clear opinion, not only if you're high scalable, but also if you are a company who needs to have their employees on track very fast, right? So not having a 6 months onboarding experience. So what I do also with Bonn Republic, and if we hire people, is to decide on what exactly does that person need to start, at least, right? And have different sections. So the first 2 weeks are focused on highly technical, getting to know each other and getting to know the systems, be up and running very fast. And ongoing, in several weeks, we kind of pump in the other informations which are important, but not so important at the beginning. So because what I fear myself if I'm onboarding somewhere, or if what I don't want to have my employees to have as experience is to be filled with information all the time, and you are not even able to remember after 2 days what you have learned on the first day. It's always the same experience. So that's how I
think
do
that's
it.
something you can do, like just encouraging people to say, if you don't understand, then ask questions. I think people feel under pressure that when they're fresh in an organization to like, I need to take this in and understand it, and I can never ask a question. But encouraging this communication, we've said it before, this culture of communication is really important, and it's, especially important in the beginning when it's a lot of information at once. But also it'd be beautiful for people to grasp what they see. You know, when you come in an organization with fresh eyes, I like to tell people, what you see now, write it down, tell me.
Yeah, definitely.
Because when you've been in there for like 3 weeks, you're already starting to glass over.
But there's also a little bit danger, right? Because we always go now, like it's a trending topic, to if we don't know the answer as a company, then it's the responsibility of the employee, right? So ask questions, which is true, but we have to direct that as employers.
Yeah, encourage
right?
it.
We have to encourage that, and we have to help them to get through that onboarding experience, because it's always stressful for everyone, right?
Yeah.
But also quite critical to retain candidates, I suppose, right? Like, how important do you think onboarding is to, like, you know, really get someone settled and ensure that they stay in the company long term?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, I quite liked what you said there as well, Ilona, about like this communication and also kind of, you know, giving people this kind of margin to not fail exactly, but to ask these kind of so-called stupid questions, because I completely understand, you know, what you mean when you go into a company and you're like, oh my God, you know, I've got all of this to learn, I've got all of this to take on board, that person's doing that, that person's doing that. I think it's really important for candidates, right, to just know that they can like fail quietly and no one's going to call them out or whatever.
Yeah, I think this is definitely a great point. What we are doing here, just as a practical example, at Personia is we have quite a nicely scheduled onboarding for all of our new joiners, and we have a lot of them, right? So what we do is everyone has, in addition to that, a buddy, right, which is not necessarily connected to all of this onboarding, but is usually someone from the team. So, for example, we are currently onboarding another talent acquisition manager, and I'm going to be one of the buddies for this person as well. So looking forward to that. And this is, I would say, you know, the relationship you're having with this person is by nature already pretty open. And this is exactly the person where you can then ask these,
Definitely.
I would never say stupid questions, but these kind of questions, right?
Yep.
Something I'd also like to add is this sense of experimentation as well. So as I said earlier, let's be optimistic that things are going to go well. And then you can stick to your more rigid process, but leave yourself like 10%, 20% to just sometimes do something different. One of my favorite ways of hiring people is not doing the German kind of standard Zeugnis, but actually talk to somebody who's worked with the person before, because you get such a rich experience about them. And some of the best hires I've ever made, especially senior hires, is talking to the person who used to be the boss of this person and then them joining us. It's magic. It's really, really good.
That's very
so
good
highly encourage
investigative
that.
work.
Yeah,
Quite like a journalist.
Yeah.
Basically what you learn with time, and it starts with the job description, right? So everybody knows, and you know that, that every job description has kind of 50% reality and 50% something else, right? And every position kind of impacts itself with the person who is joining, right? If I hire him for talent acquisition position, he impacts the company in a different way than I would do if I'm coming for the same role, because I have different experiences. So if I know that, then I can kind of structure the onboarding process and bring a lot more the experience of the person in, which is much more important, right? Exactly what you said, that to experiment and to bring the knowledge of the person in rather than pumping that person with information which we already use, right?
Yes, yes.
But rather we would like to have the opposite of it, right?
We've heard it so many times, diversity is so important. If you hire exactly the same person every time, nothing will ever change. So
Yeah, that's true.
Right. Well, I think that's all we've got time for. I'm going to welcome Dan back to the stage because he's going to do some audience Q&A questions with you all. But thank you very much. That was really interesting.
Thank you.
Done. Thank you all so much. So, to our audience, would love to get your questions here. I know we've been switching between YouTube and a couple different platforms, but the Hug Digital app, if you want to put your questions there, I'm also checking on YouTube. While those questions come in, I have a few of my own. All right? So, I heard you saying over and over again, mindset is what you're hiring for, because skills can be coached and taught. What specific hiring strategy do you have to figure out mindset within 20 or 30 minutes? And I asked this question because a long time ago, when I was part of a secret society in college, we used to do these little tricks, like we'd put a mirror outside of in the waiting room, and there's a certain kind of person that checks himself in the mirror and a certain kind of person that does not. We'd also put a single chip on a table, and we'd see who would take the chip and eat it and who would not. So do you have any of these little hacks? Because those are mindset things. Those are things you do subconsciously that no one, because answering a question, people prepare for. But their natural behavior in an elevator. I've also heard stories of leaving a janitor or someone on cleaning staff downstairs, and they see who acknowledges that cleaning person and who does not, because those kind of things are subconscious behavior. So do you have any of those thoughts? Have you tried any of those things when you're hiring?
Well, I can maybe, on all honesty, I've been not doing that, right? We will just go with the questions. But there was this or still is this pandemic situation, right? Which was forcing people into home office, and there were quite some interesting interviews I've been having with people in home office, and you could see from their behavior with their family, you could actually take a lot of learnings, right? So how did they behave when the crying child was coming into the room, right?
Good point.
No, you could look at that. Or what was happening if the doorbell rang? How was the person behaving? Was he, apologizing, or was he just standing up, right? And I think from these kind of things, personally, I could take a lot of learnings. However, it's of course really hard to then put this into an evaluation, right? So if the all-over picture was good, then it's also fine, right? But in general, quite a couple of interesting learnings through that.
Any other thoughts on that, or things you've heard from other companies on?
I would say a lot of it is about intuition. And honestly, I think in this very data-driven world, everybody looks at their KPIs, their goals, like whatever it is, all written in data. When actually, sometimes we forget that we're humans, and you just need to have a human conversation. If you like that person, you're vibing quite well, maybe that's a good sign.
How much of this is the recruiter themselves? So I have not gone in for an interview in many, many years. I work for myself, and so that's just a thing I don't do. But I remember when I was younger going in, there were some interviewers that I connected with because they just were great people. And some were straight up awkward. Had nothing to do with me. I make a career being a people person, but they just were not having it that day. So how do you handle your recruiters? I mean, how much people training, and especially when you're dealing with people of different cultures or different, just things that are maybe outside of their known space, how much training do you give to them to enable the interviews to be the best that they can be?
I think it's a really important point is cultural aspects. So do you understand if you're interviewing somebody from a very different culture, what is important to them? So just being aware yourself, what makes people comfortable is really important. And then I think to your point of intuition, you just have to have the curiosity to actually really want to pick out just those little pointers, not in a malicious way, but in an interested, curious way, because it will show you the facet of the person, and that's a good thing. It's not about, I think, tricking people with the marshmallow test. Is giving them the chance to show who they really are as a person.
Yeah, more higher for attitude, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, mindset is totally true, but I would call it attitude, because I have a certain attitude in my company, right, with my co-founder and the others, and we hire people who are like that, right? Who are outgoing and very progressive and are kind of saying what they're thinking and do not hide behind something, so something like that.
Do you find that it's easier or better to hire a homogenous attitude or a diverse attitude? So I agree with you to some extent, but even when you say like progressive, is it not healthy for company culture to have at least a few naysayers who pull, at least make you question or challenge?
Definitely, that's the art of it. I mean, you have to think about, as I said before, you have to think about how much people from which kind of behavior do you want to have and how does it impact the company, right? So what do you actually need to strive as a company? And there's a lot of people who you need who are kind of like yourself. And there's a lot of other different people you need as well, right? So you should not hire all the same people that yourself.
Absolutely.
Of course. So diversity is a big topic, as you already said.
When it comes to attitude and mindset and character, I think everybody agrees. If you were to pick maybe 2 or 3 attitudes for each of your companies that you go, yeah, these are, I just vibe with this person. I just connect with this person. So I think you mentioned the word progressive, right? So if you were to each pick 2 or 3 that you prioritize. So for me, when I'm working with entrepreneurs, coachability is the biggest thing. If I see that they cannot do something, that is not the problem. But if they're willing to learn, absolutely, they're in, right? So it actually does not have to do with matching with a job description. It has to do more with how they react to the parts that they do not match. And if they go, I'm willing to learn, or I've worked in teams like this before. So coachability is a big one for me. So go around the circle and say, okay, these are 2 or 3 characteristics, attitudes, mindsets that we really value when we're hiring. Or just even outside of your companies, just nowadays, in 2022, what do you think are the ones that rise to the top?
Yeah, I can start. So Coachability, I will give you a +1 to that, a big +1 to that. So that's definitely really, really important here at Personio. I do not believe that there are certainly purposeful candidates, right? But in all honesty, I do not really believe in that, right? Everyone has to learn, and everyone is striving for, or should strive for, development, and this is exactly one of these attitudes that we're looking for. I would say, in addition to that, empathy is extremely important, right? We are working in an environment which is caring, so we are looking for people which are caring, because otherwise you're destroying your environment, right? And last but not least, I would mention openness for feedback. I had candidates which said, well, I was asking feedback questions, they said, like, I don't believe in the concept of feedback.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I'm already finished with my development, so I heard that a lot of
There
times.
are these people. There are these people.
I don't have to learn anymore. Wow. So, thank you very much.
So one of my biggest principles is always curiosity. It kind of sums up what you said as well. It's like curiosity goes both ways. Do I want to learn? Do I know about myself? So it's understanding others and understanding myself, and always learning. Absolutely.
Great one. Do you have one? Do you have one?
Yeah, I'd say trust and not micromanaging. I think you have to let people do their thing. They have to be enthusiastic. They have to be willing to learn, but they also need their space to move around and to experiment and be curious. I think that's really important.
Yeah, willingness to learn. So it's not only curiosity, it's also the willingness to learn, and also the willingness to challenge, which is for me the most important. I would like to hire people, and I hire people who are challenging me,
Yes.
who are actually better than I am, right, and know something better than I am, and challenging me, the product, whatever. That's really important for me, because otherwise the entire effort doesn't make sense.
I love that. Thank you all so much for sharing your perspectives on this. We are actually going to go on a little bit of a break right now. I have a sneeze that is desperate to get out, and so I'm going to go and sneeze outside. But we are going to come back in about 15, 20 minutes for the next conversation. See you soon. Bye-bye.